Let's see if we're online now. Yay, we're online. Okay, so today we're going to do Tales of the Nakshatra Gods, and today we're going to talk about Savitur. So by talking about Savitur, we're going to learn about Hasta, and the most interesting thing is we're going to learn about the Gayatri Mantra, Savit, which is associated with Savitur, and knowing which helps you understand Hasta Nakshatra. So we're talking, the basis for today's talk is this book that I wrote, Nakshatra, The Authentic Heart of Vedic Astrology, which you can always just get on Amazon anytime you like, especially right now. Let's do it. We'll see if you have any questions about this stuff too. Okay, so we're talking about Indra's brothers and his mother, Aditi, and his 7 primary brothers. So now we're up to Savitu. Savita is one of the Adityas. Let's talk about Savita's name. I say Savita's name means the awakener. So basically the name is Vit, Savit. Vit is like in English we have the cognate is vitality, vital, which means life, right? So Vit is like that. Savit means like enlivening, awakening, bringing life. So this is the god of bringing things to life, waking things up, enlivening things, and this god's nakshatra is Hasta. So remember that Hasta Nakshatra has that fundamental quality of increasing the amount of attention that you pay to something, increasing the amount of alertness that you have, increasing the amount of awareness that you have of what's going on. And Hasta being the hand also implies that you have some ability to interact with it, deal with it. So who's Savita? His name means the awakener, and look who he is. He's the Aditya. Remember the Adityas, they take over the sky. Aditi is the goddess of space, and her children take over the sky, are the gods of the sky. So which part of the sky is Aditi? Which part of the sky is Savitu? Savitu is the part of the sky where the sun rises. So from the eastern horizon up about 45 degrees is Savitu's area. So he's what happens when the sun rises? The sun rises, it awakens creatures and stirs them to life. That's what the word Savitu means. To awaken, to bring life, to enliven. He is the god of expanding alertness and awareness, increased attention to detail, and stimulation to interact with the world and utilize it in more and more refined, dexterous, and detailed ways. Dexterity, handiness. So alertness is a human trait. The more alert you are, the more human you are. And humans are the most alert animals, most conscious animals. They should be. They have the most frontal whatever in their brain. So, and we have the most complicated hands that go with being humans, because with the alertness comes ability to interact with things, to communicate with the mouth, and to interact with things with the hands. So Hasta Nakshatra, Hasta means hand, and it belongs to Savitu. So it's like an awakening in the hand. Alertness in the hand means dexterity. Hasta Nakshatra is all about being aware of where things should be, being aware of what goes here, what the dial should be turned to, what the pitch should be, what the this and that. How to do something, how to throw something, how to aim something, how to do things with your hands, and just being alert in general. It's Hasta Nakshatra. So that's why I'm saying things like expanding alertness. When you wake up, you become more alert to your surroundings. That's what Hasta Nakshatra is about. You start to pay attention to the details of the world. That's what Hasta Nakshatra is about, paying attention to detail. You start to do things in the world instead of just being asleep. That's what Hasta Nakshatra is about too, actually doing things. Okay? Now, let's go on to the next part. Actually, you got any questions so far about Savita, who Savita is, what his name means, etc.? If you have any question on that point, we can think about it. talk about it. Can hasta not mean laughter? That's hasya. Hasya is laughter. Hasta is hand. What does savitur mean? Vita means vitality or life. And sa means to bring life. Savitur means the awakener, the one who brings life. Anything else? The hardest part about doing a live stream is the fact that people come in halfway through the thing, so you don't miss you don't catch the thing I said first. And I'm a little bit too disorganized or intentionally lazy to like schedule it so that you show up at a certain time. So I apologize. Okay, so now let's talk about the mantra that has the name of Savitur. Okay. The most famous mantra from the Veda. This is the most famous mantra out of all the Vedic mantras. This is the most famous, is the most often recited mantra. It's called the Brahma Gayatri. Now, Brahma means Veda. Brahma means knowledge. And Veda also means knowledge. Sometimes the Shastra or the texts of the Vedic culture are called Veda. Sometimes they're called Brahma. So the Vedic Gayatri or the Brahma Gayatri. Gayatri means the thing which sings. Gayanta means to sing. Gayatri is the thing that enables you to sing. So the thing that you sing. So this is the Brahma Gayatri. Gayatri now technically is a type of meter. Meter is a certain number of syllables in a certain pattern. Like Gayatri has 8 syllables on 3 lines. And it's called the Brahma Gayatri because this is the Vedic Gayatri. Like this is the Veda. Actually, the reason why this mantra is so famous is because it's the entire Veda in one mantra, in 24 syllables. It's got the gist or the essence of the entire Veda. And the interesting thing about this mantra and how it's related to Savitur and Hasta is that it's addressed to Savitur. Yeah. It's addressed to this God, the God of awakening, the God of becoming more alert, becoming more aware. Let me shut my email so I don't get distracted. Okay, so you might know this mantra. You know that it starts with the famous Om. Every mantra starts with Om. And actually, Om is not even a part of the mantra, but it's implied in the mantra. So we always started with Om. So you still have no clue what is going to come next, but then it's Bu. Om Bu Bhuva Swaha. And also, this is not actually part of the mantra. It's not part of the Gayatri itself. It's a prefix to the mantra. But it's so famous that probably if I just go on YouTube and say Om Bhur Bhuva Swaha, 60% of the people listening will be like, I've heard that before. I know that before. And we're just talking about YouTube. We're not talking about going to Varanasi and talking to the sadhus. So this is a very famous mantra. Now, the actual mantra itself is Tat Savitur Varenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Dhiyo Yo Na Prachodayat. So it's got 8 syllables on 3 lines. Tat Savitur Varenyam. First line, Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi. Second line, Dhiyo Yo Na Prachodayat. Third line. And then the bit in the beginning is the prefix Om Bhubhuva Swa. So let's talk about what it means. Okay. Basically, the translation that I gave in the book is we contemplate that supreme awakener, Savita, the divine effulgence illuminating all things on earth, in the sky, and in space. And this contemplation increases our awareness. So, Savita is one of the Aditis. Depending on like what kind of person you're listening to, they'll explain Savitur is the sun god. Aditya is the sun god. right? Because the sun, what do these Adityas do? They rule the sky. That's the sun. The sun rules the sky. But when the sun is in different positions in the sky, it's addressed by different names, and it's considered to be under the superintendence of different Adityas in 45-degree segments of the sky. So you get 8. So when the sun is rising, the god in charge of the sun at that time is Savitu. When the sun has set, the god in charge of it at that time is Martanda. We talked about him with Purnavasu. And then after Martanda, it's Aryaman. And then Varuna. After midnight is Varuna. And then Mitra after Varuna. And now Savitu. So Savitu is not precisely the sun, but is the god of the sun. And one of the ways to look at this mantra is as if it is a prayer to the sun, literally. And it will make sense in that way also. Okay? So if you wake up and you look at the sun, you'll notice that it illuminates all things on earth, in the sky, and in space. Bu bhuva swa tatsavitu varenyam. It's a brilliant thing. Varenyam, that's got bharga, that's got like tons of light, that's going all over the place. It's going over Bu, the earth, Bhuva, the sky, and Swa, outer space too. You might notice that the moon's phase, that the moon is reflecting the light of the sun. They notice this. Because the moon changes its shape. It's obviously not producing light, it's reflecting light. It changes its shape based on its position in relation to the sun. So it's obvious to see that the moon's reflecting the sunlight. The moon's out there in space. So the sun is lighting up Swa, far away stuff is lighting up the blue sky, and it's lighting up also the earth. Prachodayat means let us wake up to it. So let it wake us up. The sun, which illuminates the heavens and the sky and the earth, is shining everywhere. Let's wake up to it. That's one simple way of understanding what this mantra is saying. And that's why people say this mantra at sunrise. One of the times you can also say it at sunset and noon. Now, why is this supposed to be the essence of the Veda? If it's just saying, hey, look, the sun lights everything up and let's wake up. Because that is the way that the Vedas are conveyed, actually. And part of the thing about the Veda is it's very real. It's not going to go off into E equals MC squared and all this stuff that you don't really not even experience. The Veda expresses itself in very real terms. So it uses very real things like rain, sun, clouds, and stuff like that for you to be able to perceive, to understand. Now, take the words now to another level. Okay. So the last word on the second line is Dhimahi. So Dhimahi doesn't just mean, hey, let's look. Let's check out the sun, it's rising. And this also, just to bring it back to an astrological level, Hasta is like that. The Hasta Nakshatra, it's not just like, oh yeah, look around. Hasta Nakshatra is Dhimahi. Dhimahi means D is your intellect, the part of the intellect that can concentrate and focus on something and think about something. So Dhimahi means to contemplate or meditate or pay attention. And that's the nature of Hasta Nakshatra. It can really pay attention to things that you don't, somebody else, some oblivious nakshatra, on some otherworldly thing like Uttara Bhadrapada or something, they're totally oblivious to what's going on right here, right now. But Hasta is like right there, paying attention to what's going on right in front of it, or right behind it, or around the block from it even. So this is one of the reasons why this mantra encapsulates the whole Veda, because the whole Veda is encouraging you to pay some attention. That's one of the other basic messages in the Veda, is don't just wake up, eat, and go to sleep until you die. Pay attention to what's going on in between. If you pay attention, you might find something amazing. So most of the Vedas is encouraging us to do dhimahi, or to contemplate, or to think, to pay more careful attention to life. So this particular verse says, this particular mantra says, let's dhimahi, or contemplate, or think about savitu. So it might mean the sun, right? Savitu can be the sun. But the word after savitu is varanium. So it's not wrong to see this mantra as meaning the sun, because like I said, the Vedas try to teach us things in very real ways that we would constantly be reminded of as we go about our regular daily life. It's not wrong to say, hey, pay attention to the sun, really think about the sun. That will teach you something about life. But the mantra is actually saying savitu varanium. Think about the like the word Varuna. The word Varuna means the best. Varanium means the best savitu. So the sun is the source of all light. The sun wakes you up and gives you awareness. The Varanium savitu, or the best sun, is the soul. You see? I mean, I was even in an airport one day. I don't even remember why. I don't even think I was wearing Indian clothing or anything. For some reason, an Indian guy got in a conversation with me and started telling me that there's fire in your heart. There's the sun is in your heart. And I was like, yes, dude, I know what you're talking about. Right? This is how Indian people think, because they've grown up with this stuff. That the sun is in your heart. Right? Well, what does it mean? The sun is the thing which wakes and brings life. It's savitu, it brings awareness. That's what's in you. The savitu varanium, the greatest enlightener, the greatest illuminator is consciousness, or Brahman. That's the message of the Vedas. What the message of the Vedas is trying to say is pay attention to Brahman. Concentrate and meditate on Brahman. And by meditating on all around at everything, like starting at the sun, it will inspire you to comprehend Brahman. What does the sun do? It wakes you up. It causes light. You can see things. What does Brahman do? It's your life. It's the life force, which is awareness. It gives you ability to see and experience. So, Tat Savitu Varaniam, that greatest of all the suns. Dhimahi, think about it. Contemplate on it. And then by that Dhiya Yona, let us all prachodayat, wake up to it. Wake up to it. But prachodayat means rise up to it also. Let us come up to that level. Let us be it. And there's two other words you got to think about here. So, and then what does this bhuva swa mean? If this means the soul, well, the soul is lighting up your external life. That's the bhu, the physically manifest stuff. That's what the word bhu literally means. Bhuva is your emotions and your intellect. And swa is the inner self. So actually the soul is the core of what can even perceive itself. Your ability to perceive yourself is amazing. So the self can perceive all sorts of things, bhu, bhuva, and swa. But the most amazing thing you can perceive is swa, one's own self. Because one's own self is divine. Varanium savitu. So the other two words that are in here are bharga and devasya. So bharga just means like to shine, but devasya is real important. So it's to show that this is not really just a simple verse about nature. Like I've heard Ernst Willem and other people kind of joke or jokingly criticize the Vedas as like being about clouds and rain and lightning bolts all the time. That's just the visuals that they use. The mantra is not, the stuff is not literally about clouds and rain and lightning bolts and the sun. but they're using these visuals because these visuals perfectly represent the concepts that they're talking about. And you need these visuals to be able to make it real and to have something to grasp in this otherwise totally philosophical, abstract stuff. So just like the sun lights up the whole world, you can light up the whole world the more you concentrate on who you really are. The more you try to meditate upon the original form of consciousness. What is the origin of this consciousness? Where is this consciousness coming from? Try to perceive the perceiver in the self. Then you'll see something amazing. You'll actually see Deva. Deva means divinity. You'll see that the core of the self is the divine entity. So this is the summary of everything that the Veda is trying to directly or indirectly teach. And that's why this is the most famous mantra out of all the Vedas. Okay, so it's related to Savitri because it is called the Savitri Gayatri, or sometimes it's called, it's addressed to Savitri, so we should know who Savitri is. And this is the potential of Hasta, really, is to become more alert and to pay more attention and to be less bored. To be less bored with stuff by being more alert to what it really is. Oh, wow, that's not just the sun anymore. That's an external representation of who I am. That's God. I see the sun, I see God. Like, Hasta can make your life exciting like that. Wow, that's not just a block of a city street. There's all kinds of things on that block that I could be aware of. Okay, let's see what kind of questions you got. Hopefully you have some interesting questions here. Does one know the Vedas are symbolic and not literal? The Vedas are both symbolic and literal. Just as I explained here in this sutra. So the symbolism is used to illustrate and give shape to literal meanings. Okay? And then also in some parts of the Vedas and Puranas, they're literal descriptions of things, and they'll be identified as such. And in other parts of the Vedas, they're talking allegories and things like that, and they're also going to say, here's a story, here's an allegory, and then they'll tell you a story. Also, Amitanshu wants to know, Satyarthi wants to know if the moon, the perceiver, is the manas. The moon is not a perceiver. The moon is a tra. The moon is an instrument of perception. The moon is not the perceiver. The source comes from the sun. The source of the light comes from the sun. The moon is an instrument for getting the sunlight onto the other side of the earth where the sun can't reach. Isn't it? So the other side of the earth where the sun can't reach is the external world, the world which is extrinsic from the divine. The divine sun doesn't shine on that extrinsic world because by definition it's extrinsic. So how can you get consciousness to perceive extrinsic things which are extrinsic to God, to divinity, by virtue of a moon which can reflect consciousness into that dark area? So the mind, your intellect and your mind and even your ego are not you, but are instruments through which you perceive the extrinsic world. What you want to do with Dhimahi is you want to learn how to turn the instruments. The instruments are built and designed to perceive extrinsic things, but there's a way described in the Upanishads and the sadhana paddhatis that are associated with the Vedas to turn the instruments, redesign the instruments and use them in a different way, and to turn them inward so that they can perceive the perceiver instead of the objects. Samskriti says, can Hasta Ascendant, Uttarabhadra Padmoon result in deep awareness? Yes, definitely. Yes, definitely. Because Uttarabhadrapada, also it's very nice. Uttarabhadrapada moon is right there in the mystical. The subjective vantage point is through mystical things. And then Hasta can just give you a lot of alertness to it. That's a nice combo. Can kind of screw up your can perhaps screw up your how Hasta would operate in day-to-day affairs, but would but it's really nice for allowing you to be perceptive of uncommon things, esoteric things. Can the moon distort consciousness? That's all it does. It only distorts consciousness. Just as the reflection of light on a mirror, even, or on the water, distorts the thing it's reflecting according to the shape of the thing that's reflecting it, right? So the objective of yoga is actually to make the the mind completely calm, so that it doesn't have any permutations in it that would distort. And that's part of the process of how you get this senses to, instead of looking outward, to be able to look inward and see what's in there. What else we got? Yeah, Hasta sounds a lot mercurial, right? Because it's Savitur is mercurial. It's going to involve Mercury has a lot of Savitu to it. Mercury is the intellect, and the intellect is the thing that's perceiving everything. So you're going to have a lot of similarity and flavor between Mercury and Hasta. Is there a connection to Vishnu? Vishnu is Aditya, the Aditya. So Vishnu is the Supreme Sun. If you want to know more about Gayatri Mantra, I translated a book called Fundamental Truths of Gaudiya Philosophy. You can go to victorkara.com, click on the books, and scroll down to the Vedic philosophy books and look for the book with a weird cover that says it's about Gaudiya philosophy and has a picture of a sadhu on it, like sitting on his knees. That book has a section in it from Agni Purana which fully explains the Gayatri Mantra in depth. If you want to know how does the Gayatri Mantra relate to Devi, Rudra, Shiva, Vishnu, Agni, and Surya, it's explained there. What else we got? Does the sun in the chart represent one's soul in the chart? Yeah, that's right. That's what soul. The sun is Atma. In just the simple, you open up Parashara Shastra or some book, when they tell you what the planets represent, they'll say sun is Atma, moon is Manas, Mercury is Buddhi. So, but you got to understand the context and the meaning of the word Atma. Atma means ultimate specifier. The ultimate specifier of something is Atma. So generally, ultimate specifier is the pronoun I, right? So Atma basically means I, but it can also just mean something which is highly specific, especially if you make a compound word with it, like Vishesh Atma, some highly specific quality of something. So sun is Atma, but it's not truly the soul, because it's more like the I, the sense of I, or the ahamkar. Hopefully things are copacetic in my house. All right, what else we got here in questions? Is the moon intellect or Mercury? The moon is your manas and Mercury is your buddhi. So again, get my book on the planets and those signs and everything. It's called Radically Deep Fundamentals of Astrology. This will all be laid out threadbare. The difference between manas and buddhi, or mind and intellect, or moon and Mercury, is manas is what experiences happiness and distress, and has the seeds for happiness and distress in terms of wants and likes and dislikes, wants and aversions. So moon is the thing which holds desires which are based on likes and dislikes, and therefore experiences happiness and unhappiness. That's mind. That's why the mind is emotion and moon is emotional. Now, Mercury is the thing which makes sense of patterns of data and matches those patterns of data to other patterns of data so that it understands what they are. So it hears a sound like konnichiwa. And the Mercury says, where have I heard this sound pattern before? Konnichiwa. Ah, it's a Japanese word and it means hi, good day. So it's just taking a pattern of sonic data and matching it with something in its memory bank, and it comes up with a meaning, and it delivers that meaning to the manas, to the mind, to the moon, and then the moon reacts to it. So Mercury is all about how you understand patterns, how you can match things together, make sense of things, recognize things. So again, it's very alertness oriented. Mercury is more like Savitu than Manas, than the moon is. What else we got here? So hopefully I answered that question already. Isn't the sun also ego? Here in this context, Atma means ego. In the context of astrology, Atma means ego. In the context of Vedanta, Atma means soul. The ultimate specifier is consciousness looking at something. The act of looking at experience. What does consciousness do? The ultimate thing is Brahman, or consciousness, right? That's what this thing is saying. This mantra is saying that the Varanium Deva, the greatest Deva, is Savitu, awareness. Or even the word Deva actually means to be aware of things. So the ultimate Deva is consciousness, but what does consciousness do? Consciousness exerts consciousness. It becomes aware of things. As soon as you're aware of something, you have a specificity. By being aware of something, you have a specificity. I'm aware of this microphone. That means I'm not the microphone. I can be aware of myself, but there's some kind of loop going on. So there's specificity involved as soon as you're an observer. And so the specificity that consciousness has inherent in it, that Brahman has inherent in it, by virtue of the fact that it experiences things and thereby creates subject-object, that specificity inherent in consciousness is called Atma. Now, if that's too much to handle on a YouTube live stream, you could study it in Bhagavad Gita. And again, I'm selling all my books today, so like you go to victorcara.com, find the books page. It's real easy to find. Scroll down a bit, you'll find a book called A Simple Gita, which is I translated Bhagavad Gita. It'll explain this stuff, especially in the 8th chapter. Or if you want more, then you got to, go to university, Vedic university, and you can study Vedanta Sutra. Okay. Interesting question. Is the right brain, left brain, this is from Celine, right brain, left brain, solar versus lunar? Kind of where left brain, right hand is more like Mercury, and left hand, right brain is more like moon. Kind of. But the Vedic paradigm didn't split the brain into 2 hemispheres. The Vedic paradigm split the inner being into an emotional part and an intellectual part. If that's kind of the same as left and right hemispheres, then that's cool. But it's safer to understand planets in terms of that, because I don't know, Venus is also somewhere in there with right brain, right? And Mars is somewhere, and Saturn are somewhere in there on left brain. So it might not be as clean of a break. But if you go with the Sankhya Yoga system, where you're just going to take manas and buddhi, or emotional mind versus intellectual mind, and then you can have a totally perfect, clear categorization of the moon is this thing, the emotional mind, and Mercury is that thing, the intellectual mind. And what does emotional mind do? It has preferences, therefore desires, therefore emotions. What does the intellectual mind do? It experiences data coming in from the senses, makes sense of it. Understands what's what. This is a ball, that's the sun. This is a cat, that's a dog. I don't like dogs, so the mind doesn't like dogs, so when the Mercury tells it, that's a dog, the mind says, let's go someplace else. Okay, so I think I like to only take questions that are like right on the subject. So I might skip your questions. Don't get insulted. Oh, speaking of don't get insulted, we don't have Komalja here today. Apparently. Okay, it's kind of hard to read. If one has the seventh lord, if one has the seventh lord in Hasta Nakshatra on the Lagna, let's read your chart. Where are the Vedic universities? In Varanasi or in Vrindavan? There's a Vedic one. There's a university called Jiva, which I've studied there. Yeah. What's this question? Does you seem to have a question? Or it's just a lull? Jim wants to know if Hasta is related to heavy rain. No, but you have an interesting thing that the equinoxes and solstices move through the stars. The equinoxes and solstices move through the fixed stars gradually. So you're going to have an interesting thing. It's actually equinoxes and solstices which directly determine weather patterns. So, when you have more sunlight, the weather heats up, and then certain things happen as more evaporation occurs and stuff like that. And then when etc., the solstices and the equinoxes are directly responsible for weather. The stars aren't. But the equinoxes and solstices have a reference point to the stars. So you can say, hey, when the sun is in, like in the in the Vedic days, they would say when the sun is at Varuna's nakshatra, Satabhishak, it starts to get freezing. And so this nakshatra is kind of cold. It's chilly. Or Hasta nakshatra is a rainy season nakshatra. Because in the time when that statement was made, that's where the solstices and equinoxes were. You'll find some of that where they're relating weather stuff to nakshatras because they like nakshatras, they're using nakshatras a lot, and they're just talking about how the seasons relate to nakshatras. But don't get, just like you shouldn't use weather and seasons to try to understand zodiac signs, you definitely shouldn't use them to try to understand what these nakshatras are all about. Just use the gods, learn a lot about the gods, learn a lot about the Sanskrit words. Why is this thing named what it's named? What does this name mean? And you'll be fine. And don't believe all kinds of stuff. That's what I'm saying too. If you want to be Marina, if you want to get good information, you're going to have to learn how to do Saturn and Jupiter. If you only take Saturn, then you're going to be a cynic and you're never going to accept anything. And if you only take Jupiter, then you're going to be open to everything that anybody ever tells you. So take it slow, bit by bit. Start with the rational stuff. If something doesn't make sense, do a Saturn on it. Get rid of it. Okay? If something makes sense to you and it's sensible, then accept it like Jupiter would do. Okay? And start at basics. Try to understand what a planet represents. Let's start with my book, The Radically Deep Fundamentals of Astrology, and build from there, rather than letting one person tell you this and one person tell you that, and you can't even really make sense if you should cut it with like Saturn or accept it like Jupiter. So in other words, basically, concept that a Hasta man will most likely cheat on their wife is a ridiculous concept. You should cut that out. Does Hasta Nakshatra relate to the martial arts? Not directly. It's not directly related to the martial arts. But what if you have Mars in Hasta? Then you might be very alert to martial things. Or the sun. Military things. Is Hasta good for finance? It actually kind of is. Because Hasta, what Hasta will do, Hasta will make you alert. So depending on what the rest of your stuff is, maybe you're going to be alert to the movements of an enemy. Maybe you're going to be alert to the stock market. It's going to make you very alert, and depending on your other talents indicated elsewhere in the chart, or by the type of planet that's in Hasta, you like Moon in Hasta. Moon has naturally got a Vaishya tendency to it. It likes to acquire things. So Moon and Hasta, they kind of get good with being alert to how finances work. So it is slightly good inherently for finance. Yeah. Does Hasta break through the illusion of Rahu? Hasta will like to break through illusions by becoming more alert. But the thing about, now be careful with this too. Hasta, if you're very alert and I'm not, this is what people are doing to you all the time. They're really alert and you're not so alert, and they're just telling you whatever they want you to know and whatever they want you to think so that you do the thing that they want you to do, which is usually give them your money. So this is also quite possible from Hasta Nakshatra. From Hasta Nakshatra, you become more alert. If the rest of your chart is not very noble, then you become a thief, pickpocket. That's why a lot of the things about Hasta Nakshatra that you'll hear floating around the villages and the YouTubes is, oh, thieves, pickpockets, magicians, people who could pull a rabbit out of a hat, or people who could pull a coin out of your ear. Why? Because they're real alert to where that coin is and you don't have any idea where it is. Here's a good question from Jim. Will Venus show debilitating effect in Hasta? I wanted to ask if the debilitation is limited to zodiac or nakshatra. I do have a debilitated Jupiter, but I'm always open to opinions. Why is that? Well, I don't know what your chart is and how I would calculate your chart and all that, and what kind of aspects and what dignity and what amshas your Jupiter is in. But what part of your question that I can answer is, like right now, is debilitation has nothing to do with nakshatras. And if you don't believe me, just think about the fact that astrology exists outside of India. And nakshatras don't. And the whole concept of, most people in the world think that the zodiac usage and how it's used in natal interpretive astrology even originated outside of India. So whether you want to subscribe to that theory or not, the concept of exaltation and debilitation is universal concept. Nakshatras are not. The exaltation debilitation is very simply and logically explained. Again, you can buy my book on Radically Deep Fundamentals of Astrology. It'll just be simple. It's very simple about how the planet gets challenged by the element that it's in, or the mode, or the ruler, but gets support from the other two so that it can rise above its challenge. And debilitation is just the opposite. It just gets nothing but challenge from the element, mode, and ruler. So it's not about nakshatras. But now the interesting thing is that at different points in history, different nakshatras coincide with different signs. So you get weird things. Like sometimes the parenting nakshatra, like Revati, is in a very independent sign, like Aries, just sometimes. And so at those periods of history, you don't get a lot of really good parenting going on in the world. Or sometimes like the love nakshatras are in really selfish signs or lusty signs, but sometimes they're in really noble signs. So in this way, it helps you understand that topics of human life can fluctuate over history and human history and how people experience them. Some periods of time are much more conducive for good romantic relationships. Other periods of history aren't. Some periods of time are really good for financial, economic, agricultural development. Some periods aren't. Some are good for parenting. Some aren't. I just happen to see Amitanshu is like lucky. I like always see his or her questions. Are zodiacal interpretations enough without nakshatras? Honestly, yeah, pretty much. But when you also use nakshatras, it really becomes exciting, and it really becomes cool. So yeah, you can get by without nakshatras fine. Yeah, like for example, Smith Haven is not understanding what I'm saying about exaltation and debilitation. This wasn't my intention was to explain it in this video. I wanted to talk about Savitri and Hasta. Read my book. Yeah, but just one quick example, like Venus is in Pisces, getting exalted, right? Because it does not like Jupiter, but it loves water and duality, dualness, flexibility. Anyway, go ahead or just search on YouTube for my explanations of exaltation and debilitation. Thank you, everybody. All right. Let's see. Let's get back to this. Let's get back to this thing here. This book. Which book? Let me promote my book for a second. This one. Let's get back to reading this one. So I went over and I explained this mantra to you, right? Om Bhurvuvaswa Tatsaviturvarenyam Bhargadevasya Dhimahi Dhiyo Yo Na Prachodayat. We contemplate the supreme awakener, Savita, the divine effulgence, illuminating all things on earth and the sky and in space, and this contemplation increases our awakeness. Human beings have the most fully awakened consciousness of all life on earth. And this manifests physically in their having the most articulate hands, hasta. Savita increases the alertness and clarity of consciousness, and this gives us greater ability to interact deftly and expertly with the world. Then I have this other, last thing I'll say is Rig Veda also has this mantra that I don't have the Sanskrit for. Divine Savita gives us sight as if from a mountaintop, enabling us to create. So wanted to tie together the hand motif. Literally the stars of this Hasta Nakshatra are five fingers. So part of the meaning of the nakshatra is from the actual shape formed from the stars. And that's why the nakshatra has usually the name or symbol that it has. But I want to tie together why there's a hand symbol and what that has to do with awakened consciousness or more alertness. And you can see it if you look in the animal kingdom and you see what mammals have hands, monkeys and humans. And the other guys are less articulate with how they're interacting with things. That's not to say that they're not awake, because every conscious being is awake on their particular bandwidth on the spectrum of reality. Like they're very, very actually hypersensitive, more so than humans, on a certain bandwidth. But the human form of life has a bandwidth which includes the ability to use words and hands. So these are two super important things, because words can transmit complex information. And the Vedas can come in the form of words, and you can get enlightenment through words. So the human form of life is supposed to really pay attention to language and words and how to use the hand. So things like musical arts, things which use the hand. If you think even any technology, creation of all these computers is done by hands or extensions of hands and machines. So the more alertness you have, like this mantra from Rig Veda says, Savita gives you sight. The rising sun gives you sight, and you can see really far. And what does that ability to see really clearly do? Enables us to create. And what do you create with your hands? So I feel that Hasta is potentially quite a creative nakshatra, but it's not Chitra yet. It's right next to Chitra. And Chitra is super creative, but it's like on the way to Chitra. It's near Chitra. So it does have a lot of creative potential to it, but it's more about the alertness or the awareness which will evolve or graduate into creative talent. Okie dokie. This was a great one. I enjoyed our time together. And yeah. So I'm going to hit the road now because I got my daughter coming home. So thanks everybody for joining me for like this hour or something. And I'll see you again next week. And I'll be getting on the Einstein. I started working on the Einstein interpretation sidereal tropical. So you'll be seeing that soon. Thanks all.